Good morning. Welcome to the 2022 joint committee meetings for appropriation hearings. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see you in person again. I know that many of us have longed for these personal contacts that we've lacked over the past few years, and we still are praying for those who are sick as well. At this point in time, I would like to call on the Dean of the House, Representative Smyrie, if he wouldn't mind leading us in our invocation.
Good morning. Shall we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your many blessings. We ask that you watch over us and keep us in your grace. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to say to you, we appreciate your grace and your mercy. We know who we are, and we appreciate the strength and the faith that you've given us. Now that we ask that you watch over our deliberation, keep us in your hands, keep us in your coming in and our going out. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Smyrie. I let Representative Smyrie know earlier that I'd used all the power I have in Washington to make sure that his confirmation is delayed for a few more years. Luckily for him, I don't have a whole lot of power in Washington. So, but Representative Smyrie, it's good to see you, and thank you for being here. Thank you all for joining us. As you know, we will go through this process. We'll have various committees or committee department heads that'll come before us and present and go over their budget recommendations as outlaid in the governor's budget report for FY22 and the FY23 budget. The agenda has already been posted. You guys know the formalities. You know where the restrooms are. You know where everything else is. We appreciate you, Chairman England, and the House for hosting us in this year appropriations conference room. We will break today for lunch, and we may have a little agenda shift later on, and we'll let you know about that as we get a little bit closer to it. Again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to going through these hearings together with you.
Thank you, Chairman Tiller. Good morning. Good to see everyone. The Pro Tem of the Senate had asked me, were masks required in here, and he took his off, and I asked him to put it back on. But that's for obvious reasons. It was covering up quite a bit, and we liked that better. But anyway, good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. Thank you to Martha and our staff in the House Budget Office for getting everything lined up, and Melody and the Senate Budget Office team for helping us with it as well. Welcome to everyone that's online. We've got quite a few folks online that are participating via Zoom, and what we'll do there, just to give you an idea, is we learned things from previous trial and error, and one of the things that we learned last year was that it was quite problematic trying to switch back and forth to go live with those on Facebook. So what we'll do, those of you that are on Facebook, committee members that are on on Zoom, use the chat feature if you have a question that you wish to ask, and we will ask that for you from the podium up here. It just makes it a little bit easier, a little less complicated on the lag time that we have from switching folks to off of mute, back on and back off, and all that sort of stuff. And with that said, I'd also ask that if you are participating via Zoom, that you please keep your microphone muted so we don't get the feedback back here in the chamber. At this point, we will stand at ease for just a few minutes. We do expect the governor here shortly, so if everyone would please just keep your seats, and as soon as the doorkeeper alerts us, we will welcome the governor in the chamber, and we will kick off our hearings this morning. So thank you for being here.
Mr. Doorkeeper, do you have an announcement? Mr. Doorkeeper, please escort the governor to the podium. Good morning, Governor. The mic's yours.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Hope everyone survived the winter storm that we had over the last few days. Just starting, I'd like to just thank the team from the state and really a lot of county local governments worked very hard over the weekend. GEMA, State Patrol, DNR, cut teams. We had National Guard folks out there working with county EMAs, and I know in some parts of the state we had a good bit of loss of power, but thankfully I think we fared fairly well, so we just appreciate everybody's hard work over a long weekend and maybe looking forward to doing that again this coming weekend. Also just want to offer condolences to the England family and Cindy. Certainly have you guys in our thoughts and prayers. I'll apologize for my fairly lengthy remarks as someone that has sat in the seats that you're in right now, but we got a lot of good things to talk about this year and a lot of good things that we look forward to working with you all on for the amended 22 and FY23 budgets. And I know that our agency heads are looking forward to discussions and answering questions from you all on my recommendations in the coming weeks. And I hope that you will let us know, OPB included, if there's any further follow-up that we can help you with. We look forward to doing like we've done the last couple of years, having very successful budgets and working together. And, you know, when you look back over the last 2 years, we've all had to make some very tough but necessary decisions to ensure this great state could withstand whatever we might face, and we've hunkered down, and as you can tell, we've emerged stronger because of it, and I appreciate y'all's work and support of those efforts. But despite the uncertainty of the last 2 years, I've never been more optimistic about our state, and I tell people that every single day. Over the last month, I've had the privilege to announce both Georgia's single largest economic development investment ever and the lowest unemployment rate in the history of our state, an unheard of 2.8%. Today, we also have more Georgians employed than we've seen in decades, and our commitment to protecting both lives and livelihoods of hard-working Georgians and keeping the doors to our economy open has without a doubt kept us the #1 state in the country for business. And as many of you who were here in the spring of 2020 will recall, we made significant reductions in state spending in the FY 2021 budget to hedge against any potential economic downturn associated with the pandemic. But because we kept our economy open and supported our small businesses through these difficult times, we saw record surpluses as we closed the books on FY 2021 this past July. I would kindly ask you not to give Dr. Dorfman and Director Farr too hard a time for only being off $4 billion on their revenue estimate last year when they speak to you next. But we have the philosophy it's always better to underpromise and overdeliver. I firmly believe that when government takes in more than it needs, it's our responsibility to the taxpayers to return those funds to them, because it's their money, not the government's. And these funds will do more in the good of the pockets of our citizens than in the coffers of our state, especially when we're dealing with an inflation rate that's at a 39-year high. Therefore, my amended FY 2022 budget authorizes the Department of Revenue to provide $1.6 billion in refunds this year to every taxpayer in Georgia from this one-time surplus. And under this plan, as taxpayers file their 2021 tax returns, they'll get back some of their hard-earned dollars from $250 for a single filer up to $500 for joint filers. We're also now able to fully restore those funds that were reduced in FY 2021, reinvesting those dollars in critical areas. No investment pays off as highly as investing in education for Georgia's children. Success in the classroom begins with the teacher, which is why we must retain our highest quality educators while continuing to attract the best and brightest to the profession. When I took office, I pledged to raise teacher salaries by $5,000. And while we were able to make a $3,000 down payment on that promise, this budget will fully fulfill my pledge with an additional $2,000 increase in teacher pay beginning right now in this current budget. Between the FY 22 and 23 budgets before you, we will invest $643 million directly in our pre-K and K through 12 educators. And in keeping our promise to both of our educators and our students, we must stand by our obligations to fully fund the QBE formula, ensuring that our school system and teachers have what they need to be effective in the classroom. Therefore, both budgets before you eliminate the $388 million funding reduction made at the start of the pandemic and fully funds the quality basic education formula. Collectively, the 22 and 23 budgets will provide an additional $1.4 billion in direct funding in K through 12 schools, investing more per K through 12 student than ever before. But we know that today's job market requires specialized skills for long-term growth. Georgia's success in attracting fintech, advanced manufacturing, and other new economy employers, as well as our growing need for truckers, healthcare worker, law enforcement, agriculture, and other hardworking professions that impact every aspect of our economy, means we need to improve access to quality post-secondary educational opportunities. The best way to improve access is to keep post-secondary education affordable. To that end, the FY 2023 budget will fully restore the austerity reductions made in higher education, reinvesting more than $271 million in those systems. The good news is this will allow the University System of Georgia to remove the special institution fee imposed on students and their families since the Great Recession, and will allow the Technical College System of Georgia to expand critical programs in healthcare, manufacturing, and commercial truck driving to better meet the needs of our economy without having to increase tuition on our students. My office has also asked Commissioner Dozier of the Technical College System to add law enforcement and criminal justice degrees to our high-demand career initiatives, which will provide free tuition to over 1,000 Georgians looking to obtain those degrees at our technical colleges. Additionally, I've heard from many of you, as well as from parents and Hope scholars, which includes Marty and myself, about your concerns that as tuition has increased at some of our higher education institutions, the amount covered by Hope is not keeping pace. The FY 2023 budget will help restore equity in the Hope programs by providing an additional $25 million to guarantee that Hope programs cover at least 90% of tuition at all Georgia public higher education institutions. As we continue to invest in our citizens to ensure their success in the future, we also must not lose sight of those in need of help today. We know that even prior to the pandemic, many hardworking Georgians struggled with the rising cost of health care. Now, widespread inflation nationally has further strained the pocketbooks of our citizens. Throughout my administration, I've sought to increase access to affordable health care for our most vulnerable citizens while also reducing costs for Georgia families. The 23 budget continues those efforts by providing $139 million for Georgia Access as part of the Patients First Act. These dollars will establish a reinsurance fund and a Georgia-based health exchange to make it easier to choose an affordable plan that best meets a family's needs. And as more individuals are able to participate in the healthcare market, competition is expanding options and driving down premium costs across the board, benefiting Georgia families across the state. But we know that health care costs not only impact consumers, they also impact our health care providers. We must support medical providers participating in the Medicaid network at rates that will enable them to serve their clients efficiently. This is particularly true in rural areas where there are fewer doctors to see ailing Georgians. The 23 budget will increase funding for providers by $85 million through the elimination of this requirement, so that they will continue to serve Medicaid patients without worrying about operating at a loss. The 23 budget also further implements two initiatives I was proud to work on with the General Assembly last year. It will expand Medicaid coverage for new mothers from 6 months postpartum to a full year as part of my commitment to improving maternal mortality in our state. And I know that's something that has been a priority of both bodies of the General Assembly, and we appreciate all the work that you have done in regards to that. It also provides $39.5 million to fast-track enrollment for children in Medicaid when a parent or guardian applies for food assistance or TANF. Inflation is also straining the resources of those who care for some of our most vulnerable Georgians, our children in foster care. My 2023 budget includes $27.8 million to provide a 10% provider rate increase for those individuals and organizations caring for our state's foster children to help offset rising costs. Keeping Georgia a beacon of economic prosperity and attracting growing business to our state depends on ensuring that every Georgian feels secure in their community. Public safety and supporting those in our law enforcement community have always been priorities of my administration and will continue to be. This budget contains my war on street gangs and human trafficking by adding an additional $1.6 million for the Attorney General's office to establish a gang prosecution unit and expand the human trafficking unit. These units help ensure that we can prosecute criminals to the full extent of the law and also put them behind bars. We're also investing $7 million in medical examiners and forensic services at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to upgrade crime lab equipment, provide an additional 32 staff members in the crime lab and medical examiners' offices, and begin improvements at GBI headquarters. These enhancements will allow the GBI to address an increasing volume of cases, tackle backlogs, and processing criminal evidence, so that justice for victims is not delayed. Furthermore, as our prison population has increasingly become filled with violent offenders, our Department of Corrections is faced with an aging prison facility infrastructure that was not intended to house the level of offender who resides there today. These aging facilities require higher levels of staffing and facility maintenance to manage these dangerous environments. Therefore, my budget proposes a much-needed investment in our prison infrastructure, providing $600 million to purchase a newer prison facility and construct an additional 3,000-bed facility to house medium and high-security prisoners, allowing us to close 4 of our older and more dangerous prisons, saving the state operational cost in the future while providing safer environments for our correctional officers. Finally, I want to take a moment to thank our state workforce for their efforts over the last 2 years during the pandemic. We have not only focused on keeping businesses open, but we've ensured that our government also remained open and continued to serve our citizens, even when many states did not. At the beginning of my term, well before the pandemic, I called for a total of 10% in cuts to our state government so that we would have a leaner bureaucracy and more efficient government, freeing up valuable taxpayer dollars to fund priorities that impact everyday Georgians directly, like education and public safety. Little did we know how critical that decision would be in helping us weather the effects of the pandemic. We're continuing to see returns on that decision to cut where we were able and to invest more wisely. We're getting more out of government's workforce thanks to greater efficiencies, and we're also leveraging technology to improve customer service while reducing cost and personnel. Today, excluding the university system, We have fewer state employees than we did in 2008, while serving more Georgians. Yet I recognize that state employees have not had a cost of living adjustment to their salaries since before the Great Recession. This has increased turnover for state agencies, creating staffing challenges and increasing costs for recruitment and training. And I know you've heard these issues as well as I have. Therefore, these budgets will provide for a $5,000 salary increase for full-time benefit-eligible state employees to better align state salaries with comparable positions in government, in other government sectors. I'll also be introducing legislation that we look forward to working with you all on to increase the employer match for 401k contributions for employers under the GSEPS plan from 3% to 9% based on the length of service, providing a higher quality competitive retirement opportunity. And finally, this budget recognizes the lifetime contributions from our retirees by investing $150 million in the employees' retirement system to provide the first COLA since 2009. As I said before, I stand before you today optimistic that Georgia's best days are ahead of us because we have weathered the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. And much of that is thanks to a strong partnership and a great working relationship that we have built between my budget writers and the leadership in this room over the last several years, but especially during the pandemic. We are in such a good place because of all of you and your work that you have done in conjunction with us on our state's finances. The budgets before you reflect my priorities for investing in education, our economy, and our state workforce, public safety, and most importantly, in our citizens, our fellow hard-working Georgians. And I know that you all will look forward to putting your stamp on that budget, and we look forward to working with you to do that. Because truly, over the last 3 years, if you look at the budgets we've had in good times and bad, they have been good budgets for our state. They've had bipartisan support. And that's what we look forward to this year. And we look forward to continuing to work with you all to have a great session and continue to keep our state moving in the right direction. So thank you for having me this morning. Good luck with the rest of your hearings this week. And we look forward to seeing you around the Capitol. God bless you.
Thank you, Governor.
Good to see you.
As the governor is continuing to walk out of the room, I would like to return the favor of thanking he and his staff for the work that we've been able to do over the last couple of years on not only getting through this pandemic, but working on the budget that's before us. And a lot of the ideas that are included in it are many ideas that you have brought to myself or to Chairman Tillery over the last couple of years of things that you feel like we need to do. And Director Farr and his team have been a huge help in putting a lot of that together.
Echoing those comments, thank you, Governor. Thank you for bringing us your priorities. And also thank you for including so many of the items that senators and representatives for years have included as their priorities in your budget. We know that's that you're listening to us. We appreciate that. And also it's a tribute to Director Farr and Stephanie and the others at OPB. Thank y'all so much for working with us early on as you developed your budget priority plan. We'll wait just a minute on it. If you don't have a copy of the agenda, there are a couple of, there's a stack going around right now so you can keep up. And if someone doesn't get a copy, just let me know and we'll be happy to run another copy for you. We have Dr. Jeffrey Dorfman, the state fiscal economist who's joining us online. Is Dr. Dorfman ready to go?
I am ready to go.
Well, thank you, Dr. Dorfman. You're on now live with the joint House and Senate Appropriations Committees, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I certainly appreciate the call out from the governor on the accuracy of my forecast. Although I will agree that when he hired me, he did say I should always be low on the revenue forecast. And we achieved that. Anyway, I thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm happy to be with you and glad to provide you this update again on how Georgia's economy is doing as we go into the budget writing season. And somebody there is operating the slide, so if we could go to the next slide, I will begin. This chart shows you personal income in the United States. And while there isn't necessarily any particular trend evident there, although you can see large spikes in the months where the federal government sent out COVID stimulus checks, what we do know is that personal incomes are still 8% above where they were at the start of the pandemic. So people are still doing quite well. They have plenty of money to spend, and that's why we've been taking in a lot of tax revenues. Next slide, please. This chart, whoops, I think we skipped one. No, all right, go to the next chart. Thank you. This slide shows the savings rate. And what you can see is before the pandemic, it starts in January of 2020, we were at about 7 or 8%. People were saving 7 or 8% of their income. And then the government started passing out money and people decided it was a good idea to save money during a pandemic. So our savings rate jumped to 33% in April of 2020 and then stayed elevated in the 15 to 20% range for about a year until March 2021, which is where the final coronavirus stimulus check came out. That was the $1,400 ones, and you see the savings spike up again to about 27%. From April to August, we stayed about 10, and finally, the last few months, we've gone back down to the normal 7 or 8%. So we seem to have normalized our savings now that the free money from Washington, D.C. has stopped. However, if you add up all the extra savings during the pandemic, from those savings rates being above the normal, Georgians, this is not national, this is just Georgia. Georgians now have an extra $75 billion in their bank accounts that they've saved up. That's about 2 months worth of normal spending. So Georgia consumers have a lot of money available to spend. They spent a fair bit on Christmas this year, but they still have an awful lot left, and that is going to support our economy going forward. Next slide, please. If we assume that federal aid has ended, I know Washington is actually talking in the early stages about maybe another round of coronavirus payments, but if we assume that federal aid has ended, then we would expect as the economy returns to normal, incomes to drop about 2% from that elevated rate. Normally, that would cost the state about $500 million in tax revenues as people's incomes dropped. However, a lot of those elevated incomes I showed you on the earlier slide were tax-free money that the federal government passed out. And so the state wasn't collecting taxes on them. So in reality, the hit to state revenue is going to be about $300 million. We'll replace this with normal economic growth over about the next 6 to 9 months. And so what this means is we expect an economic slowdown as we sort of finish FY22 and enter FY23, not a recession, just a slowdown as we sort of struggle with replacing all the free money with actual productive income earned in the economy, but we should do it. Also important to note, you all get the monthly revenue updates. We're sort of done with the easy comparisons. For the last 12 months, we've kind of been showing revenues compared to during the lockdown period or before businesses had fully figured out how to operate during a pandemic. But starting now, we're going to be comparing revenues to when the economy was very strong in 2021. And so it's going to be much tougher to beat the sales tax and the income tax collections that we had last year. Next slide, please. All right, so why, one of the things that is a challenge is, as the governor said, Georgia's economy is very strong. Our employment is back to roughly record highs, where we were before the pandemic started. And yet every business wants to hire people and is having a lot of trouble getting those new employees. So a question I get asked a lot is, why are there so many open jobs? Why can't we find people to hire? And so here's sort of the answer at the top. We have the responses from a national survey on why people are not working. So they asked just people who weren't working. And you can see number one reason was they have money in the bank. They still have so much money from those stimulus checks and the bonus unemployment benefits that they don't see the need to go out and work. Second reason, and this is really a variation of the first one, is their spouse is employed. So there are a lot of families that were two-income families before, but now can get by on one income plus the money they saved up during the pandemic. So that second spouse will stay out of the job market for a while until they start running short of that money. Third reason, care responsibilities. That could be children. Remember, this is a national survey, so in a lot of states, schools are closing a lot more frequently than they are here in Georgia. But that can also be elderly parents. And for example, could be people that are taking care of elderly parents at home and therefore are more nervous about going out and maybe bringing COVID back to that elderly parent. And then the fourth reason is scared of COVID. So that tells us nationally a little bit about what's going on, why there are fewer people looking for jobs. On the Georgia side at the bottom, we do get a report, unfortunately, with a fairly long lag from the federal government. So we're looking at sort of August 2021 data here. But Georgia was the #1 state in the country on the percent of employees that are quitting their jobs. Now, partly that's because the job market is good in Georgia, right? Those people are quitting because they found a better job. We are #2 in separation rate. That is employers firing workers. Why are we #2 in separation rate? Because we're having so much trouble finding employees that a lot of employers have taken a shot on marginal candidates that maybe they wouldn't normally hire. And a lot of them didn't work out, so then they had to fire them. We're the #3 state for job openings in the country, evidence of what the governor was saying about how strong our economy is, and #4 for higher rates. So we are hiring as a percent of total employees in the state, 4th best in the nation. Unfortunately, that higher rate is exactly equal to the quit rate plus the separation rate. So we are hiring new employees at exactly the same rate as they are quitting or being fired. And so that means our employers are working really hard just to sort of tread water and keep the number of employees and job openings even. We just can't get ahead because there's so much churn in the job market. People see so many jobs that look good. They figure they'll try that and they'll get a raise. And so the restaurant down the street hires the cook from your restaurant. Well, that's one hiring, but there's still one job opening. We just moved which restaurant needs to hire a cook. All right, next slide, please. I thought I would talk a little bit about the supply chain problems. First, it's important to remember that when we see national news stories about supply chain problems and they talk about the ports, they're really talking about the ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach. Those are the ones that are backed up the most. And unfortunately, those also receive 40% of all the port volume in the US. But the ports in Savannah and Brunswick are doing much better. So if you're out and talking to business owners who are complaining about difficulty getting their goods into the country, just remind them to use the ports in Savannah and Brunswick instead of Los Angeles or Long Beach. Obviously, our supply chain is still struggling. As you can see here, I say optimists thought it might be fixed in February or March of this year. There's sort of a lull after Christmas where the volume shipped goes down, and that gives people a chance to sort of catch up. Pessimists think it's going to be February of next year, so another 12 or 13 months. I'm probably leaning more towards the pessimistic outlook there. A lot of the problems that you're seeing now, though, where people are posting on social media store shelves that are empty, those are not because of the ports. Those are just because of Omicron and the occasional truck driver being sick and not delivering that day. And so while the bread aisle might be empty one day, you go to the same grocery store the next day, the bread will all be there, and maybe some other shelf will be empty because a different truck driver was sick. But those are just sort of spotty, random things, not any persistent problem. All right, next slide, please. All right, I've got two key things I thought I would point out to you as good things for you to watch to see how the economy is doing. So this first one is called the goods service split in spending. And this is going to tell you how we're doing at repairing the supply chain in a sort of indirect way. So since 2019, before the start of the pandemic, American consumers are buying 4.6% more stuff. This is adjusted for inflation. So that's not we're spending 4% more because of inflation. After inflation, we're getting 4.6% more stuff. However, we're getting 17% more goods, and we're spending about 1% less on services. Okay? That huge shift towards goods and away from services is what is straining our supply chain, right? A haircut doesn't come in through a port, doesn't get on a truck, right? But that new recliner you bought, or materials for your DIY project to renovate your home guest room into a home office, those things all do. So this change in how much we're spending on stuff versus services has overloaded the infrastructure for moving things around. We expect as sort of COVID fears decline, people get back to doing services, get back more out into the world, that goods purchases will decline and service purchases will increase. We've seen that start to happen the last couple of months, but as you can see, we still have a long way to go. If you watch this gap, it will tell you when the pressure is easing on our supply chain. Next slide, please. Second thing I want you to watch is consumer debt levels. So what you can see here is 2019 versus 2021. Student loan debt up a little bit, credit card debt down by an offsetting amount, and then auto loans up a little bit because, of course, those car prices have really jumped during the pandemic. However, in 2 years, American consumers only added $130 billion worth of debt. Normally, over a 2-year period, we've been adding $350 billion, so almost 3 times as much. That slowdown in how much debt we've piled up means consumer debt levels are very manageable right now, especially when you factor in the low interest rates. So what that means is if we do have the economic slowdown that we're expecting, or if a recession did happen to hit, consumers are in a good place in terms of money in the bank and ability to borrow more to be able to weather that storm. Next slide, please. So will we have a recession? The odds of a recession in 22 are very low. Consumers simply have too much money. Debt levels are too low. I do think we will see growth slow down more to a normal pace. But consumers have plenty of money to spend. Also, even if consumers slow down their spending, producers are going to have to keep producing because those supply chain issues mean their inventories are a little on the light side. And so they would take any slowdown in purchasing as an opportunity to build back up their inventories. Next slide, please. All right, here we have a chart of our budget amounts. The green bars are actual collected revenues. Blue bars are original budgets, and the red bars are amended budgets. What you can see here is if you look on the right for FY 21, 22, and 23, with our amended revenue estimate for FY 22 and the governor's proposed revenue estimate for FY 23, you can see that really we have 3 years there with roughly equal revenue. But much better than we were actually the 2 years just before the pandemic. And next slide, please. Then here we have the 5-year outlook. This chart does appear in your budget book somewhere, although it gets a lot less attention than the current year estimates. And what you see here is that after slow growth between FY 22 and FY 23, we resume sort of a normal growth pattern through FY 27, growing at about $1 or a little over $1 billion a year. That's sort of an historically normal amount of new revenue for the governor and the General Assembly to have to spend in each budget. But it is important that we remember going forward that much of that increase in revenue is going to go to cover mandatory spending amounts, the QBE formula, Medicaid, things like that. And with that, you can go to the next slide if you want, but I am finished with my presentation. And I believe, Mr. Chairman, that I have time to take a few questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dorfman. I'm sure you'll have several questions. We always appreciate your thorough discussion of very relevant issues, particularly for this committee, but for, I think, questions that all Americans are asking right now. I've got one question for you to kind of get things started. You mentioned roughly $75 billion that Georgians have saved since January of 2020. Quite a staggering number when I looked in comparison. And you said that, you know, Americans as a whole only add about $350 billion in debt each year. That was just a staggering number as we put them together. My question is about that savings across income levels. I know anecdotally we would think that those at higher income levels save more. I'm wondering if you have any research or any data that talks about differences that you may see of savings levels across different income levels.
Sure, that's a great question, Mr. Chairman. What we do know actually is that people at the bottom, we usually divide income by quintiles when we look at things like this. So the bottom 20% have actually doubled the amount of money they have in their checking or savings accounts. So actually savings went up quite a bit at the bottom because, of course, the people at the top didn't receive the free checks. Right, the checks only went to people that made under, I think, $150,000. Certainly, the people at the top still made nice money in the stock market and other things during the pandemic, and their wealth has gone up too. But this is a case where we see actually a considerable improvement in the financial situation of people at the bottom of the income distribution. This was the first time in American history that we had a recession during which credit card balances went down and consumer credit scores went up. The average Georgian's credit score went up 8 points, which is sort of unheard of when the unemployment rate is going up.
Thank you for that answer. I think we got some questions from the audience, or we may have some online.
We do have one online from Senator Emmanuel Jones. What impact has the slowdown in the auto delivery inventory levels had on the state budget and retail auto sales?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So the state budget has benefited from the supply chain problems in the auto industry because car dealers have been able to get such elevated prices for both new and used cars. Our revenue collections under TAVT have actually gone up during the pandemic, so they may be selling fewer cars some of the time, but they're getting better prices, and we get a percent, so we've done fine. They are now running out of cars. So car dealers managed to keep their businesses going on slightly lower volume and much higher prices. But auto dealership lots, the last report I saw, they now have 1/3 the normal amount of cars on the lot. And if you just drive around, you can see that those lots are really empty. So we are a little worried going forward. I don't think they can keep this up. There are reports that the chip problem that's been hurting car manufacturers is getting better. So hopefully they'll be able to get some new cars on those lots pretty soon.
You got one question here in the audience, number 12, Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I've found is that in my part of the state, I see where the food prices are going up consistently, but the farmers that I represent are telling me that the prices that they're getting for their goods and services have remained stagnant. Can you kind of speak to that, please?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. I mean, I am by training an agricultural economist, and the food industry is what I teach a class on at the university. Farmers are receiving reasonable prices right now, but certainly not prices that have kept up with inflation at food stores. And the reason is that the costs, right? COVID has not imposed costs just on farmers. Farmers' costs are up. All the inputs they buy, fertilizer is up, chemicals are up, pallets are up, plastic bins put your stuff in, or cardboard boxes put your stuff in is up. So farmers' costs are definitely higher, but food processors, so the people who turn what those farmers grow into the food that we buy, their costs are through the roof. They're buying the same sorts of inputs, plus having to pay their workers more to keep them, plus having to install PPE in those factories, keep their workers healthy. And the same thing in the supermarkets. The supermarkets are having to raise their margins to cover paying their employees more and to protect their employees. And then in between the farm and the food processor and the supermarket, we have to put that food on trucks. And the cost of trucking that food around has gone through the roof. It's up over 40% in the last 12 months. So all those costs, all the stuff that happens from when it leaves the farm until we get it home from the grocery store, is why food prices at the store are going up so much more than the prices farmers are receiving.
Okay, we've got one online from Chairman Perkle related to workforce participation. The last labor force participation rate data that I've looked at had the state at the lowest levels in 45 years. This represents a large population of potential workers. Any comments on this topic?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are exactly correct. Workforce participation is down. I showed you during my talk some survey results on some of the explanations people have told us nationally on why they're not participating in the workforce. So you saw those reasons. They've got money, they've got people to take care of, they're scared. So those tell us sort of why we're down. And the good news is that data does show us that people are rejoining the workforce. Each month, some of those people come back. Similarly, there were stories early on about lots of sort of people in their late 50s or early 60s sort of retiring early at the start of the pandemic, but those people are re-entering the workforce as well. So we do expect workforce participation to come back as COVID sort of recedes.
Senator Gooch.
Dr. Dorfman, thank you for being with us this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the historic levels of inflation we're seeing not only in Georgia but across the country with the labor shortages, trucking costs going up, just procurement in general is increasing at high levels this year. What do you think long term the impact is going to be, and how long do you think this inflation will be with us, and what's your projection on when there may be a correction?
Thank you very much for the question. So I think inflation is already starting to sort of moderate. However, I don't expect prices for most goods to go down particularly. I think what we're much more likely to see is just them to stabilize at this more elevated level for a while. What we see if we break things down is that inflation in the price of services has been steady at 2% for like 15 or 20 years. And that good inflation has been basically zero. And what the pandemic has done is brought back inflation in the price of goods. Now, a huge percentage of that is in the price of cars. Used car prices are up 37% in the last 12 months. And that is making a significant impact on the headline inflation figures that we see. So if we can get car prices to stabilize, if we can make them enough chips, so car prices will go down, that'll take our 7% down to about 6%. If we then get the supply chain sorted out and get people buying services again and fewer goods, we can take that 6% down to about 4%. And then if we can just moderate the run up in wages that's been going on as employers fight over employees, we can get back down in the 2 to 3% range. But I expect that to take all of 2022. So I think what we're going to see is the inflation rate falling very slowly during all of 2022. And by the end of 2022, to see us back down in the 3 or 4% range. And then by 2023, be back down to the 2 to 3% range.
The next question is from the audience, Chairman Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Dorfman. I just want you to comment, if you don't mind, please, on the housing market, both nationally, state, and maybe locally too, rural versus urban. How has Georgia fared, and do you see easing in that, or is this where we are to go forward in the future?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a great question. Atlanta home prices have had one of the better appreciations nationally, and so have a number of other parts of Georgia, so we've done pretty well for that. The big problem we have in housing right now is labor. There just aren't enough construction workers to build as many houses as home builders would like to build, and that's not going to get any better. We've still got a lot of rebuilding going down in the Florida Panhandle from the hurricanes. And now we've got a lot of rebuilding that'll be going on in Kentucky from the tornadoes. Those are, to our south and to our north, pulling some construction crews away. So there just aren't enough workers to go around in home building. And what that means, if you're a home builder and you have to build fewer homes because you can't get workers, you're going to build more expensive homes. So we're going to get fewer starter homes, and we're going to get more expensive homes. I don't think home prices can keep going up as fast as they have been, but I don't expect them to go down. I don't think this is a bubble like we had back in 2005, 2007. This is just an increase in home prices, and they're going to stabilize at this level, I think.
Representative Williams, Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doctor. That was all the good of information. I need some clarification, though, when you mentioned that the problem was on the West Coast for our ports. I do remember that a lot of the period these numbers were being put together, at times we had as many as 27 cargo ships backed up in the port of Savannah. Although we did all we could to make sure down in Brunswick when the autos came in, the President Pro Tem got his first. But try and tell me where we are in reality, because we ran out of storage space at the port because we couldn't get them in. And there was a problem even with transport trailers. Where do we stand now, and what's the long-term effect on us as a result?
Yes, thank you for that question. So you're exactly right. We did have a problem in our ports with storage space. Basically, people's containers were coming in and they were not picking them up. They were leaving them stacked on the ground, and we were running out of places to put new containers. We solved that problem the ports basically said, look, you got to come pick up your containers or we're going to essentially start charging you rent for leaving them here. And lo and behold, trucks showed up and people picked up the containers. The reason they were sitting there is a lot of people didn't know where they were going to take them. So for example, Walmart, if a container for Walmart comes into the port, Walmart has two places they can take that. They can take it to a distribution warehouse where it then goes to their stores, or they can take it to a different distribution warehouse where it waits for you to buy it online. Because of the uncertainty of the pandemic, Walmart and other retailers didn't know whether we were going to be buying things online or in the stores. They didn't want to ship it around twice, so they just left it in the ports until they could get a better idea of where to take it. And that did slow us down for a while. But we solved that problem. They have picked up their containers, and we are operating smoothly now.
Well, evidently somewhere there's still 2 or 3 containers full of toilet paper and paper towels. And based on my trip to the grocery store the other day, Campbell's Soup's got some in containers somewhere because they didn't have any Campbell's Soup either. We did have a question online from Senator Jones, but it was basically, or is basically the same question that you'd already answered from Senator Watson just a few minutes ago. Any other questions here in the room? Any other questions online? We'll give folks just a second to type to see if they do. Dr. Dorfman, it does appear that you've answered all the questions, or maybe created a few more questions that folks just don't know how to ask yet. So we will, if we wind up having more questions after we close out here with you in just a second, we'll let you know and get those answers to those members. But we appreciate you being here with us this morning. I know that your job over the last couple of years has been rather interesting in trying to predict what is happening and what's going to happen. But we just want you to know that we appreciate the time that you've put into trying to cipher through the tea leaves to get us to the point that we are today. We don't see any other questions, so at this point, thank you, and we will see you soon. I'm sure we'll run into each other over the next couple of weeks around the Capitol. So thank you very much for being with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Commissioner Crittenden, we're a little bit early, but if you'd like to go ahead, we'll go ahead and give you the floor.
Good morning. Glad you're with us, and the podium is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Tillery, I think he stepped out, Chairman England, and members of the committee. It is very good to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you on the Governor's budget recommendations for the Department of Revenue for amended fiscal year 2022 and state fiscal year 2023. My name is Robin Crittenden, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue. And I'm joined here today by Deputy State Revenue Commissioner Frank O'Connell, Assistant Deputy Commissioner Georgia Steele, and our Legislative and Communications Director, Mason Rainey. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Department of Revenue's mission is to administer the tax laws of the state of Georgia fairly and efficiently in order to promote public confidence and compliance while providing excellent customer service. Our team of over 900 dedicated and hardworking professionals are committed to being the most effective and accessible tax administrator in the country. To meet this commitment, we strive to provide excellent customer service, to treat all taxpayers and license holders equitably by consistently administering and enforcing applicable laws and administrative rules, to find innovative ways to improve processes using technology, to continuously identify and address opportunities for improvement, and to maintain a highly motivated, well-trained workforce. Next slide, please. Even during a pandemic, our team has worked to continue to lead the way with innovative tools, systems, and programs to support our fellow taxpayers and to improve the services we provide to the citizens of our state. Some of our recently completed and ongoing projects include, first, call center enhancements. This is a new shift to an agency-wide focus and approach to our call center performance. We are working to establish department-wide service delivery goals to better serve our constituents. Some of the more robust communication options that we have rolled out and are pursuing include expanded email support, chatbots, and voice bots. Second, the centralized alcohol licensing portal. This project is to create the centralized alcohol licensing portal that was set forth in law in 2020 in House Bill 879. House Bill 879 required the development of an application that would give local governing authorities and retailers the ability to register and submit applications, renewals, and payments at a centralized location. The ability to submit new applications is actually going live today, and we plan to go live on renewals later this year. Third, transition to the cloud. We have migrated our two primary applications, Drives, our motor vehicle title and registration system, and ITS, our tax system, as well as several supporting applications, into the cloud environment. The benefits of this transition include cost savings, performance enhancements, as well as eliminating redundancy and increasing system resiliency. Fourth, we have already begun work to upgrade ITS to version 12. This major system upgrade is scheduled to go live later this year. It will provide enhancements for both internal and external users, including improved security features. Next slide, please. As we work to continuously improve our agency, here are the results from the department's tax collection efforts from FY 2015 through FY 2021. A steady net collections growth trajectory is evident from fiscal year 2015 until fiscal year 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the economy during the spring of 2020. From fiscal years 2015 to 2019, net revenue growth averaged 5.75% year over year. Fiscal year 2020 saw a minus 0.039% decline, which is really just a flattening of growth. Fiscal year 2021 garnered a strong return of revenues to $26.9 billion, or an amazing 13.5% growth over fiscal year 2020. Overall, net revenue collections for fiscal year 2015 through fiscal year 2021 grew by $7.87 billion, or 41.4%. The $3.2 billion of revenue growth in fiscal year 2021 over fiscal year 2020 came from three primary areas: individual income tax, sales tax, and corporate tax. Some of you have asked me about the marketplace facilitator collections that became effective in April 1, 2021. Since that time, we've seen a total of $1.16 billion collected, and that includes both state and local collections, with approximately 55% of that going to the state. Next slide, please. DOR has consistently remained at approximately 0.7% of the overall state funds appropriation for the state of Georgia, making the department a very valuable return on investment. Next slide, please. Now, turning to the FY 2022 budget. The DOR FY 2022 budget appropriation is comprised of 4 key groups. Tax divisions, which comprise $82.6 million, or 41% of the budget. External divisions, which comprise $54.1 million, or 28% of the budget. And pass-throughs, which comprise $48.1 million, or 25% of the budget. Rounding out the DOR budget is the administration program at $12.6 million, or 6% of the budget. Next slide, please. DOR's overall budget is primarily comprised of state funds. Expenditures over the 7 fiscal year period since FY 2014 have remained steady and neutral, with a small spike in fiscal year 2018 due to a large outlay of Forest Land Protection Act, or FLIPA funds, to local governments in that fiscal year. The gray line in the middle of the graph demonstrates the DOR operational state funds, where you can see the consistent, steady level of expenses year over year. The blue line at the bottom of the graph demonstrates pass-through state funds, where you will notice the spike of expenses in FY 2018 due to the FLIPA increase. Also, the addition of general obligation bonds since fiscal year 2017 for the build-out and development of the drive system is reflected in the increase of the total funds line. Next slide, please. Now, turning to the governor's amended fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 budget recommendations on pages 331 through 335 of the budget book. Governor Kemp's recommendation for DOR in the amended fiscal year 2022 appropriation would add $5.6 million, made up primarily of the $5,000 state employee pay increase plus 1 DOR specific change. Governor Kemp's budget recommendation for fiscal year 2023 would provide $16.6 million in additional funds, $13.6 for statewide changes, and $2.9 for DOR specific changes. A little more detail about those changes are on this slide and the next, for which I'll provide a few brief comments. Line number 1 and lines 4 through 9 are all statewide changes that Governor Kemp just detailed, and they're reflected in all 8 operational budget programs. These budget enhancements will greatly assist with our critical and pressing recruitment and retention needs. Line 1 is the $5,000 employee salary increase. Line 2, this appropriation reimburses our local government services program for the fireworks funds, which were distributed in early October. These funds represent 5% of fireworks excise tax collections, which were distributed to 182 local governments. Line 3 supports Governor Kemp's recommendation to utilize $1.6 billion in prior year undesignated state fund surplus to provide a one-time additional refund for tax years 2021 of $250 for single filers, $375 for head of household filers, and $500 for married filing jointly. Line 4 for fiscal year 23 creates a $5,000 employee cost of living adjustment for all full-time benefit-eligible state employees effective July 1, 2022. Line 5 in fiscal year 23 allows eligible employees to withdraw up to 40 hours of earned annual leave annually from their accrued leave balances. Lines 6 to 8 in fiscal year 23 reflect statewide changes to the employee retirement system, teachers' retirement system, and DOAS-administered insurance programs. Turn page, please. Line 9 for fiscal year 23 reflects a statewide adjustment to TeamWorks billings. Line 10 for fiscal year 23 dedicates $2.7 million in state general funds as fireworks trust funds. House Bill 511 moved distribution of these funds from OPB to DOR. And finally, line 11 in fiscal year 23, these funds support the DOR fraud unit's use of Department of Labor data for analytics to verify information, such as validating employer verification, wage verification, Georgia withholding, and unemployment wages. Next page, please. This slide shows the amended fiscal year 2022 budget changes that I just talked about, but laid out by each budget program. Next page, please. This slide continues to show the annual fiscal year 2023 budget changes laid out by each budget program. There are 4 items on this slide, with the remaining items continuing on the next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my report. Thank you again for the opportunity to present the governor's recommendations to the DOR amended fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 budgets. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, and welcome in your new role.
Thank you.
We know we've had you here various times in other roles, and thank you. I think it's the first time as Commissioner of DOR. So,
Yes, thank you.
welcome in your new role. We do have a few questions out there. The first one is Chairman Huffstadler, number 8.
Thank you, Chairman Tillery, and thank you for being here. And I want to say you talked about being accessible, and I think you're the most accessible department that I've dealt with as Chair of Finance, and I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Though I told Chairman Tillery, he's kind of like my wife. No matter how much money we on the revenue side bring in, they seem in this budget to find a way to spend it. But aside from that, you talked about the data analytics. Do you have an implementation date for that? And I will say that they've done an incredible job of probably doubling the revenue coming from that area, even without this program, from what I've seen the last year.
So this is you're referring to the sales tax analytics pilot project. That was from House Bill 811 in 2018.
Actually, I meant the software on the new program coming in.
The software.
Where you were going to match it up with the data.
Oh, with the Department of Labor?
Right.
Okay. That's something that we have actually been doing. And it allows us to save a significant amount of time by receiving that information from the Department of Labor so that we're able to do our fraud checks and turn around the returns much faster. We actually have been paying it, 2 areas were combined, and we've been paying it with that, but some money that was from there that we've been able to carry over. But we need new funds to do it at this point, to continue it.
Senator Lucas.
Commissioner,
Yes.
I've got 2 questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
I signed for a family member to get a car. I paid the taxes on it. When they finished paying the notes, I gave the title to them and they ended up having to pay taxes again. Why is that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the whole,
I
everything you said.
said I signed a note for a family member to get a car. I paid the taxes on it when I got it. When they finished paying the note, I gave them the title and they had to pay taxes again. Why?
I'll have to look at that specific situation and get back to you. But I believe it has to do with transferring it to a new owner. But I'll check on that specifically.
All right, the other question is, understandably, I hear by rumor mill the governor is proposing not taxing military retirement. Do you have any idea what kind of money we're talking about?
I don't have that at this point.
Can you find out?
Sure, absolutely.
Because you know, when you take money out, you got to find a way to replace it.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, I think you've exhausted the questions. Thank you again for your presentation, and thank you for being here this morning with us.
Thank you.
Just one housekeeping thing real quick. There's a little bit of confusion about folks getting online to view this. We're going to ask that those of you that are with us on Zoom, if you are not on either the House or the Senate Appropriations Committee, if you would, please log out there, go to the streaming feed that is available from the House website or from the General Assembly website. We're trying to make sure and manage how many folks we've got on, because we want to make sure that those folks that are members have the opportunity to ask questions, and we don't want to overuse the bandwidth that we have that is supporting Zoom as it comes into the building here. So with that said, we will take we're all running ahead. Let's take about a 10-minute break, and please try to be back in here at 10:35. We will have Commissioner Pat Wilson with the Department of Economic Development, and with all the news that they've got going on lately, I'm sure that you'll want to hear his comments and see what else may be happening. Thank you.
If you'll begin returning back to your seats. And I think we have Commissioner Pat Wilson, Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development, online. Commissioner, can you hear us?
Yes, Blake. Chairman, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. We know you're on an important mission right now on behalf of the state, so thank you for joining us here at this time, and proud of the technology that allows you to do so. The mic is yours.
Chairman Tillery, Chairman England, thank you so much. Both committees really appreciate your time and effort, and obviously we can't do what we do without the efforts of the Appropriations Committee and the support that y'all have given us over the years. I've got a pretty simple budget for my department this year. Really, if you look over the budget, it comes down to the raises that the governor put into the budget for state employees that have worked really hard over the last 2 years to continue to keep things going in the face of a pandemic. We're grateful for that. One of the things that I've mentioned to quite a few of you over the years, we have a pretty tremendous turnover in headcount. Just being able to keep employees employed in the department is a big part of being able to do what we do and recruit business for Georgia. So that will go a long way toward being able to keep some of our best and brightest from moving on to the private sector after we teach them how to do their job. I also wanted to highlight the one other item that's in my budget that the governor put in would be 2 positions that go into rural development for the Rivian project. And as you all know, this is the largest project in the history of the state. We're really proud of the work that the team has put into this. Part of what we have modeled this project on is the Kia project in West Georgia. And if there aren't many of you that were around at that time, but for those that were, this is directly in line with what we did for Kia. We supplied 2 members of our team who who really managed the project and followed through with everything to make sure that the state's promises were kept and the project landed on time. And so this would be one person who's focused solely on managing the project, and a second person that's solely focused on coordinating all of our workforce resources to make sure that we are doing everything we can to fill the 7,500 new jobs that would come to the state. So those are the new ads that are in our budget. We had a pretty amazing year department-wide. It's a year that I think I'm really proud of the colleagues that I work with every day who did a great job. Global commerce saw major, really unbelievable increases across the board. Tourism, in the face of really shifting sands of travel, we really have continued to increase our tourism and visitation across the state. Film saw a record-breaking year. Our international trade team, we assisted companies in 141 different counties find new opportunities overseas. 84% of those companies were small business. And then our Georgia Council for the Arts, our little small and mighty team of GCA, they distributed the largest number of grants to applicants that they ever have, and $2.3 million in grants in 131 different Georgia counties. So it really was a fantastic year for the department, and I will turn it back over to you, Chairman, but I'll leave with, we can't do it without the support that we get from you guys. So I want to say thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your report. I think we do have a couple of questions. Representative Hewley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Commissioner, thank you for your report. Can you tell us what you all have done to support minority business development and what your plans are for the coming year.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, small and minority businesses are extremely important, the backbone of what we do. We continue to have a team that focuses on all small businesses, but small and minority businesses are represented from our global commerce team by Lindsay Martin and his, we have a second person on that small business team. They continue to maintain a website that is focused solely on small and minority businesses. I'm happy to sit down with you, Representative, and go over kind of what we focus on, but it is a continued and very important focus of the department.
Commissioner, I have a question. You mentioned turnover. Do you know what's your current turnover rate at Department of ECD?
I don't have the rate, Chairman, but I will get that to you. Anecdotally, I know that we're hiring 5 positions right now, and at least I've got one project that you know very well that I've had 3 project managers on because I've just constantly had turnover. Salaries among the private sector, whether it's Chamber of Commerce or whether it's our private sector partners like the utilities, have continued to increase pretty tremendously. And so I train up some smart young kids and I lose them pretty quickly. And so I do appreciate what you guys are looking at for us, especially on the back end with 401ks. I think that's a really important piece of being able to be competitive. But I'll make sure that we have a up-to-date turnover rate for you, Chairman.
Thank you. We got 2 folks. I think Senator Watt. Did you have something? How far? Senator Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, I certainly want to pile on, so to speak, relating to Rivian and the number of jobs and the amount of money that they're spending in the state of Georgia, and I think this bodes well for the future. If you could add any insight into that, and maybe if there's any update at all on the mega site, if that's going along well, securement of the land and so forth, if you could just give a little brief update, and I'm not asking you to give away any secrets there.
No, absolutely. We're tremendously excited, and the progress continues in East Georgia. This is a generational project, and if you look at one of the things that I pointed to over the years why we work to land projects like this, what has happened in West Point around Kia. They had a tremendously high unemployment rate. It really has changed that entire part of the state for the better schools, better opportunities, keeping kids at home when they graduate high school, they can remain in the community and work right there with high paying, good paying jobs with benefits. That's what we're expecting in East Georgia as well. These jobs average $56,000 a year. Plus benefits on top of that, 7,500 jobs that will be going to people all across the region. And in conversations with Rivian, their plans are to invest in the school system, create study programs that really give kids the skills that they need in order to participate in those jobs. It's terribly exciting, but that really is just the beginning too. We all have seen this transformation of the automotive industry from really the internal combustion engine to electrification. It's coming fast. And in Georgia, we have about 55,000 Georgians that participate in the automotive industry, whether it be at Kia directly or the suppliers that are supplying OEMs across the South. And so we have to make sure that we continue to attract those jobs so that Georgians can participate in the economy of the future. And so this is really important. It really is with SK coming into Jackson County and with Rivian coming in here in Walton County and Morgan County, it's a game changer for us as far as the electrification of the automotive industry. Things are moving moving along in East Georgia. I think you'll see in the budget that there's a line item that is in Commissioner Nunn's budget at DCA for acquisition of land. That's acquisition of land, it's due diligence costs, it's grading a 500-acre pad, and then it's the rail extension. All of that is really rolled into one line item in the budget, and that will continue to move us in the direction of getting everything tackled in East Georgia. But this is, back to kind of the beginning sentiment. This is generational change for really an entire state, and we're excited about it. So I appreciate the question and the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what's going on out there.
Senator Beach.
Commissioner, I just want to piggyback a little bit on Dr. Watson's question about Rivian, and again, congratulations on that project. You talked about hiring somebody for workforce development and a project manager. What about, are you going to need resources for infrastructure and interchange or any kind of road system improvements for that project? And are you coordinating that with GDOT? Because I remember on the Kia plant, we built a new interchange for them to make that project successful. Do we have to have some resources for that, for infrastructure?
Yes, Senator Beach, thank you. Commissioner McMurray has been with us throughout this process, and I want to give him some credit too, because that team at GDOT is as solutions oriented and forward thinking as any team I think we've ever had over there. I'm really proud of the work that Commissioner McMurray and Janine Miller have done to support us. And yes, there is an interchange that's needed on I-20, and I know Commissioner McMurray and GDOT have been working on that side of the house. There's some additional road improvements that need to be made on 278, and then a separate smaller county road over there as well. And so all that is being coordinated with the team at GDOT. And I give them a lot of credit. They are fantastic at what they do. But Senator Beach, thank you for that question. And when Commissioner McMurray comes in front of you guys, be kind to him. He's done a tremendous job.
Mr. Commissioner, got one question for you from myself on tourism. What are you seeing around the state on the recovery from kind of the COVID lack of movement and folks getting out and about? What are you seeing kind of around the state, kind of outside the metro, but then what are you also hearing on the inside the metro area as far as conventions and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, Chairman England, it's kind of a fascinating dynamic right now in that the really outside of the metro Atlanta and our destinations have been experiencing really some of the best years that they've ever had, whereas Metro Atlanta and our convention destinations have been decimated still, and that business is starting to come back, but it's not fully back. I don't know if that I was just talking with somebody last night who was talking about CES, the largest consumer electronics convention in the world. Really, it was terrible this year because it happened right when Omicron happened, and you had a ton of people who backed out. It impacted the entire event, and it really the convention business really is continuing to lag behind. But I think when Commissioner Williams comes in front of you guys, I think the state parks are still experiencing some of their best years ever, as Georgians have refound our state parks. And then if you look at Savannah and the coast, Helen, to name a few, I know Thomasville had a great Christmas season. There are a number of places, our destinations in the state that are just booming right now. And so it's a strange comeback to tourism. I think one thing that we know is that, and I'm sure everybody sitting there today feels the same way, that we're ready to travel. I think everybody's ready to get back out. It's just a matter of understanding what where you go, what those regulations are going to be. And one of the things we have going for us is that we've remained open, and that people can come to Georgia and they know what to expect when they get here. So I think that one of the things that that we would be appreciative of is I think we've applied for ARPA dollars to look at when we come back, when travel really does start to come back, making sure that we're capturing as much of that new travel as possible. And I think that there's a great opportunity here for Georgia. But that's kind of a long-winded answer, Chairman, to say that we're seeing things come back, but more slowly in Metro than we've seen in really our destinations around the state.
While you were answering that, folks at World Congress Center wanted to make sure I understood or knew that the Poultry Expo was coming next week over there. So that'll be a huge bounce back for them, because that is an incredibly large show. Looks like
Chairman, I do want to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, that I do want to say that during the pandemic, our World Congress Center and the team there did an amazing job of pivoting to, I know we held a number of sporting events, and if you look for an agency that really worked to change their model and grab what was out there, they did a really great job.
Yeah, I know that team over there, a bunch of them did things they don't normally do for some of those groups that were coming in, and that just shows the tenacity that they have to get through and get the job done. So it was great to see what they were working on and doing. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here today and for your comments and your insights. I would dovetail on what the chairman was mentioning about the World Congress Center, and we saw people doing things there they were doing the work to get the job done, pushing brooms and emptying trash, and folks from the executive level, and you just don't see that kind of commitment often, and it was refreshing. You mentioned the kind of an inverted marketplace right now. Lots of folks go into the rural areas versus coming to Atlanta and coming to the cities for some of the holiday seasons and the tourism. How do we continue to capitalize on that in our rural areas? We continue to struggle in our rural areas in terms of population, in terms of incomes, in terms of job satisfaction and attracting folks to those areas. How do we continue to capitalize on that shift in the marketing and the tourism dollar?
Thank you, Senator. Excuse me. It's interesting. Tourism, and I know we're all guilty of this. A lot of tourism is habit, and when you experience a place that you love and that speaks to you, and you have a great experience, a lot of times you go back there. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that we have seen people go into rural communities, refinding our rural downtowns, finding our state parks, really going across the state and finding new adventures. And they go back, they tell their friends, they talk about these places, they post it on social media, which we try to take advantage of too, by leveraging their social media experiences and amplifying those things. Senator, I think the one thing that we can do is continue to market. That really is what tourism is about. And then once people find a location, we need to make sure that we continue to push that out. And social media gives us opportunities that we haven't had before. And so we really do we've got an amazing social media team in our Explore Georgia division who really work to amplify the messages that people are pushing out themselves. When they hashtag Explore Georgia, we're pushing that back out too as part of a marketing effort. But what really comes down to taking this momentum that we have now and continuing to push marketing back out to capture more people as they continue to hit the road and come out of the pandemic. But I'm excited about the possibilities because I do think that people have found new adventures over the last couple of years.
Got one online comment from Senator Bruce Thompson. He says he just wants to thank you for your leadership and the continuation of Georgia being the #1 place in which to do business. I think we'd all echo the same thing. Have another question from or comment from the audience, and it's Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner. One question, I've been saying this about 10 years, so let's make it 11. The marketing aspect, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but unfortunately, when you go to a good place and you tell somebody, that's very limited. Our neighbors to the west have proven what marketing can do. Why have we not seen a marked increase in our marketing dollars for our tourism? A lot of local tourism, mine included, we don't have the money to properly market. When are we going to emulate, and I've heard every excuse in the world, our neighbors to the west? That's Alabama.
President Williams, look, I'm grateful for the comment. We have, I think over the years we have increased our marketing budget in tourism, and then, and I can go all the way back to Governor Perdue. When you hit a downturn in the economy, what's the first thing that really is that we've lost? I mean, during the recession, we lost marketing. Going forward, we grew marketing back up. We're in a better place today than we were, 10 years ago. But I give the General Assembly a tremendous amount of credit for that. You guys have funded our budget and given us additional funding that we have then leveraged to push out into marketing. You increased our budget last year by $1 million, and we're grateful for that. And so we can do more with more marketing opportunities, but we're grateful for what we have, and we're going to continue to what I think is leverage it better than anybody else. I've got an amazing team that does a tremendous job. And part of this too, and this, Representative Williams, is the partnership that we have with our communities. And I give Savannah a tremendous amount of credit. Columbus does an amazing job, and Atlanta, of course, but Helen and Thomasville. We have all these. We work together to leverage each other's funds, and it's a great partnership. And so I thank you for the question, and I think every year that you've mentioned it to me, I agree with you. But I do think that we do an amazing job with the resources that we've been given by the General Assembly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other questions from the audience or online? In person, we good online? Commissioner, thank you again for your time, and appreciate the work you do on behalf of our state.
Chairman, thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Next on your agenda, you'll see we had Commissioner Butler from the Department of Labor. There was an issue that he has, a family issue that's of significance health-wise, where he will not be able to join us today. Is there any, I just want to make sure, I don't expect anyone else here from the Department of Labor, but I want to make sure before I go run over their time that there isn't someone else here and that there's no one else online. Gotcha. And he did let us know, and we're definitely praying for his family. But we did have, with that, knowing that was coming, we were able to contact Commissioner Black earlier this morning, and Commissioner Black was gracious to change his schedule and come join us slightly early. And thank you so much, Georgia's Department of Agriculture Commissioner, Commissioner Black, if you don't mind coming to the podium. And again, thank you for rearranging your schedule to help with ours.
Let's get started. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman England, thank you for your message this morning. Our job's to be here for you. It's not for you to worry about my schedule. I'm glad I appreciate the word. I'm very glad to be here. Good morning, members. Happy New Year to all of you, and it's a pleasure to be before you today on behalf of 525 folks that are working for all of us every day, and I think you'll be very proud of them. And I've got a couple of things. If it could just take I know certainly respect the time. We're not going. I promise you, I'm not going to take Mark Butler's time either, because I know y'all not going to sit here. But I do have a couple of just status reports that would be fitting before we get into the numbers, if that's okay. Number one, as we face some of the things that we encounter on a daily basis, we're at that time of the year where everybody's on guard for disease. We do have one H5 waterfowl that we do not know whether it's highly pathogenic or not, and we're hoping and praying that it is not. It is in northeast Georgia and is right in the centerpiece of right even ground zero. So bottom line is, from a poultry standpoint, those of you who have poultry growers, if we could help facilitate you maybe in your communication this week back to your constituents. You want to remind them about biosecurity. We've got some resources available to you to communicate to your folks, but it is something that always this time of year, and when we find one, got to remember in waterfowl, about 20% of the birds actually have some type of avian flu that they just naturally shed. The waterfowl doesn't get sick, but it can cause havoc in the state's number 1 segment of the ag economy, and we're on high alert right now with our folks that monitor that. It's hard to believe we've moved 3 years past Hurricane Michael. I'm very thankful that we're past that. But your vision and your willingness to accept some ideas that we had, and Chairman England and I will never forget sitting on the bleachers of the Georgia National Fairgrounds after we returned for those first couple of days of observing what had happened, and literally on the back of an envelope wrote down what became to be known as our START loans that help get people back on their feet. You funded $75 million of those loans. We were able to get them in the hands of 426 people in very rapid fashion. Let me tell you about the report of that. Only 4.8% of that portfolio is delinquent. We knew that we had some very risky loans, but I can tell you this portfolio, I think any bank would swap with the portfolio that we have at the Georgia Development Authority. But what you did, we're entering into our 3rd year of payments. And it's just, we've got 5 more to go, 4 more after this one. And interest rates go up this year to 2%. And that portfolio is performing well. The folks that you help get back on their feet and stay on their feet are honoring their end of your bargain. And we're administering that, and we've got a wonderful group of folks that are doing that. We just passed also our very, very thorough audit of the federal resources of Hurricane Michael. Some of you will remember that we really thought that was a $2 billion enterprise. Then we got a little upset. I thought it was going to be about $500 million. Then they only gave us $347 million. Then when we proposed it to the producers of the state, they only requested $171 million. So that was what we actually administered. But my report to you today is, number 1, we passed our audit with flying colors with the federal government and with the state government. We'll close this program down and close those books here in the next couple of months. But here's another thing that I want you to know, and y'all might get on to me from an appropriation standpoint of this. When you deal with the federal government in these type of contracts, they say, oh, well, you're going to get $347 million. You can take 5% of that for administration. Y'all do the number on that. That's 17.3. There's no way in the world that should ever happen. That's one of the problems at the federal level with all of these things, is we just spend. Well, what happened, we came back down to 171 million, which was then times 5%, 8.3 million. And I told them it'll never happen. Our department, working with just a couple of outside advisors, we were able to administer this entire program for right at $1 million. Not 8.3, but $1 million. And then once we got through that, and Jimmy Wilson, our CFO, we had to turn that money in last January 31st and complete the deal. Except it took till May for the federal government to tell us how to give the money back. So all of those kind of things kind of fit into the general rubric of what we find from time to time, but I want you to know that we've passed and we've served folks. You funded some food processing loans last year of some of the leftover state money, $7.8 million. We've funded a couple of those loans, and we still have a high degree of interest to people. Senator Kennedy, our mutual friend in the food process, in the meat processing business, I hope there are going to be several other Joseph Eglovs that the money y'all approved last year are going to have some expanding protein and vegetable processing, but we've been working on that very hard. You approved last year for us to have new funding in our inputs division with respect to an agronomist and other folks helping with soil amendments. I know we're going to have some detailed reports in Chairman Dickey's committee here in a couple of weeks about that, but all those staff positions are funded and they're at work. Gate renewals, we finished the complete 3-year cycle now, so that everybody now is just a third of the people a year, and it's about $1.8 million a year that's coming in. I'm going to speak to that because the governor has addressed that in our budget proposal, where those monies go. Lastly, from standpoint of hemp, was pretty. It's been an interesting year in hemp. We've finally got all the positions you funded. Our legal officer, but we actually funded a license coordinator. And then we funded we found our liaison for law enforcement. And unfortunately, those are 2 of our employees. We lost both of them to COVID. Tragic for those families, but we're back almost fully running with that. Licenses are down, though. There is a glut in that market, and we're going to have to wait to see what future that holds in the next couple of years. But just want to give you that stewardship report of what y'all have done. If I could refer to the tracking document, all of our numbers are between pages 102 and 105. I'm going to address a lot of these bigger numbers in a combined fashion. And sometimes when we get to this meeting every year, I think it's important to remember how our budget is structured. We have 3 program areas. We live within our means in 3 program areas. It's marketing, administration, and consumer protection. That is the GDA proper. But you know, we have a lot of other things that are attached to us, like the poultry labs, the veterinary diagnostic labs, and the Agri Center, and soil and water. So sometimes when you kind of go through our budget document, that's all under our top, but it's just those 3 program areas that are our employees. But we're doing various other things financially for those other state agencies. So I'm going to address these numbers in aggregate today, though. With respect to the governor's proposal on $5,000 pay increases, that's $2.567 million combined for all of the people that we help with. I'm very grateful for this. I would love, we've got case study after case study that y'all have heard from corrections, from everybody else. But let me give you one of mine. We had a guy, wonderful young man, properly trained exactly for the job that he was doing. He'd been with us for 4 years, was an structural pest control inspector, and he had a bright future. His trajectory with us was as high as he wanted to go. He was single, and he had an opportunity, and he took it. He today is doing the same job for the Iowa Department of Agriculture, making $60,000 that we were paying him 36. And I think we all know, I've said for many years, this is my 12th budget that I've presented to you. I will put it in different phrases each year, but I would suggest to all of us that the ship of state of Georgia is sailing toward an iceberg, and that iceberg is, what do we hit? Who is going to run this government 5 and 10 years from now? And the things that we're doing with this package are very good, but it is going to be an ongoing thing that all of us are going to have to be committed to address. I want our folks we've made dramatic improvements in the last 11 years with our career paths, but I still have compaction in the middle when it comes to middle management and really having some of those steps. We have a very good strategic plan. I'll be curious as the discussions move forward on these macro numbers if there's going to be an opportunity to have a little bit of flexibility and management flexibility within our own strategic plan. We did that with the money that you gave us last year. You gave us about $508,000 last year for salary adjustments. And this is a macro number here, but if there's any flexibility as we move throughout the session to discuss, does everybody have to be 5,000? I'm not contesting the governor's proposal. I'm just asking if there is any discussion. I'd be happy to present our strategic plan for consideration of the legislature, and perhaps we could that would serve us. If you look at the transfer of marketing to administration, that next point, that's within 2 of our budget areas where we've just had some out of balance on the books, and it's been going on for several years, but this is just a rewriting of the ship. No new money. It's just moving it from one column to another that helps us within those program areas. And OPB was appreciate the governor recognizing that request. Soil and Water does have $169,000 in 6 new vehicles you see there that have been proposed. If you fast forward to the 23 budget, that macro number for salaries is 3.5. The 320 to allow for the leave, those considerations is there, 1.2 for our employee part of ERS. I think those are great proposals. I don't have the information at the tip of my finger as to how those numbers were, how that got to be $320,000, but I'm sure we'll be having those discussions as we move through the session. I think those are really good ideas. And then, as you know, there are always these things called state adjustments for some of the other things that just go up with the government, and there's usually a blanket part of that, and that's what that $32,000 is. There are some cuts. Don't be alarmed. We're aware of these, and they're absolutely right. There's a couple of consumer protection vehicles actually that were already purchased, so those need to come off. We had, when we had our issues back during the COVID budget with farmers markets, and y'all put 120 grand back in to help us keep some markets open. We've actually been some miraculous things happen with overall profitability of the markets, and so that support level needs to come off because we're finding good where we need to be. You help rescue, and we've been good stewards of the money, and feel good about that proposal. The Southwest Georgia project, I think, was a Senate ad last year that governors has backed off as I suppose as a one-time thing, and then. Same thing with the revenue replacement with the Ag Expo. When COVID hit, y'all put a little extra money along, and that's not needed anymore. You see that $500,000 transfer is on an annualized basis. There's a new element on here that the governor announced right before Christmas, and there's a state government SNAP, basically, is the best way I know how to put it, a food assistance program that I don't know who the visionary author was back in the mid-90s, but it was one of those bills where and I was around here, not doing this job, but I have some, Gerald, I don't know who passed the bill, but it was a great idea, but we never funded it. It was one of those where there was a permissive thing put into law, but I don't know if it's ever had a dime of money put in it. The governor's proposed putting $800,000 in that cause for us to be able to purchase or to make available to the school for food banks to purchase directly from Georgia growers for products that can get through the food system, the food bank system. The only thing that I would take exception, and if you're reading the tracking document, I wish we wouldn't put in there that this is to solve some waste problem caused by farmers. That's not true. We do have produce that goes unused, but that's not because of any waste activity of the producer. That's just a little, my sensitivity of semantics, I guess. But I hope it's going to be providing opportunity. And certainly we want to work with the Food Bank Network. The governor's got a great idea, and we agreed to work with them on that. You have put also, and I thank the governor for this. When you see this element that's called Agriculture Trust Fund, that was part of the dedication of fees, House Bill 511 last year. And now, for the previous 11 years, many of you, Chairman Dickey would know very well, I have asked you to let us run the farmers markets and let us retain the fees and let us run the business and be accountable to you, which we are accountable to you, but the way we've had the money to run the markets is we've borrowed the money. We've always had bond packages of anywhere from $1 million to $3 million that we'd borrow money for 20 years. And when I got here 11 years ago, the team before me was buying light bulbs with 20-year money, which was just not a good way to run a business. And so we've never been able to get there until right now. So these dedicated fees will go, what you authorized in law last year was for some of these types of fees to come back to the market for market maintenance. So what we're going to be putting this in is in this trust fund. And in this trust fund, it'll be able to roll over, and we'll have a maintenance fund, and we're not borrowing any more money. We should be borrowing money to build buildings and do those kinds of things, capital projects, but not to pave parking lots. And so I thank the governor for the vision on this and appreciate his where that's gone. There's also $180,000 for maintenance costs at our poultry veterinary labs as well. There are two vision things or two opportunity things that I'd love to leave with you. No specific proposals on these, but I do know that there's some members of both the House and Senate that have interest in this. Don't know where the overall cap on the bond package is. I know that's not in the governor's proposal, but there are some steps that, if there is some room, to really look at another second phase of a building proposal at the Atlanta market. I know there's Chairman Dickey and others has some interest in that, and there may be of getting a little bit on both sides and coming back to a conference. We'll just wait and see. I don't know what the appetite of that, but I think we've got a good plan for both chairmen. I want you to know we've got a good plan for that, and if that discussion opportunity comes available. And the last one, and I know Senator Kennedy just left, but his constituent that I was speaking about, he's got one of the finest beef and pork processing plants that's been built in the state of Georgia forever. There's a lot of demand for that. I hope that Georgia Groms help boost that, but I think COVID's taught us some lessons too. And I've got a daughter and son-in-law that are actually in that business of selling cattle directly, beef directly to consumers. I also know that they are booked with Senator Kennedy's constituent out through the end of 2023. They already have their harvest dates planned out for a year and a half. And that's because we just don't have protein capacity. I hope our loan programs that y'all funded are going to help us get a few more built. But once we build facilities, if they're going to open, I got to have an inspector. It comes right straight to Senator Kennedy's constituent. His business is expanding so much that he needs a second shift. And so, Mr. Chairman, when we get to a subcommittee, we may be talking to Chairman Houston about that and put a little, if there's any room there, because once again, that's, I'm glad to follow Pat Wilson. We're also in the economic development business as well. So, yeah, these businesses can't open if they don't have some of our folks there working. So, Mr. Chairman, that's where we are today. I'm sure grateful for the opportunity to share the time with you and love taking questions you might have.
Thank you, Commissioner. It really was a thorough report and appreciate the effort you put into it. And thank you again for helping with the schedule as well. You do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the ring of that, Commissioner Williams. I'll give that some thought. But thank you, Commissioner. Let me just ask you, I have a couple of things, and I'll try and condense them. You mentioned losing a person that you really hated to lose, obviously, to another state agency in another state. My first question, and I'll give you all my questions together, is have you got in your mind what it will take in salary increases to be truly competitive and retain good people? That's first. The second one is, have you considered in your bond packages, not the big markets, but many markets in urban food deserts?
Yes, sir.
It is very difficult, like in Savannah, go to Garden City, your transportation's a problem. It's not much you can put on the bus to carry back home. Right. And there are a lot of food deserts throughout Georgia, urban food deserts. And finally, gives me concern to see $500,000 leave marketing and go to administrative when the story needs to be told bigger, I think, than reducing it. And the story can't be told. I don't care how much I might like McDonald's until they tiptoe across television and other places, it ain't really a story.
Right. Thank you, my friend. And if I begin my answer with, I would hope I'd have this opportunity, and you've presented it, for me to personally thank you for 2 years ago sitting right here and paid me one of the greatest compliments of my career in our exchange as you asked your question. I'll never forget it, and I appreciate that. And some others, I'm not even going to, that's between me and Representative Williams, but I'll always cherish that. First, let's talk about food deserts. I just had a great meeting with Senator Harold Jones. He chaired that study committee over the course of the summer looking at the food security issues. I think the name of the committee was Food Insecurity. I challenged them a while ago that we should be encouraging people. I want to improve food security. I don't like fighting insecurity. I think it's the same thing, but it's all the way how you say it. I think we arrived at a wonderful opportunity for Georgia Grown to come alongside his ideas from a standpoint of access and information, capturing data about where food is, how do you, even right down to elementary as recipes and what you do. Please talk to the senator. I think we hit on a really, really good idea about an hour and a half ago. And I think he's got a budget idea that I don't even think, I think we can do it even within our own framework within Georgia Grown to pursue that, to help him and help address some of the things that you've mentioned, Representative. Here's the challenge that we face. I cannot speak to other agencies, but I can speak to what I know. And I know that when I started here 11 years ago in this budget, and it took us either the second or the third year to get the enhancement. I was trying to find somebody to work in Atlanta or Savannah or anywhere in the state to inspect fuel pumps. And that starting salary was $20,800. Now, y'all supported my strong, and Governor Deal supported my strong request to get that somewhat out of the cellar. But if you look at, we couldn't go from 20,000 to 40,000. So we got it up to starting salaries at 28, and then those inspectors that require a college degree, we got them from like 27 to 31.5, give or take. That's still where we are. We were able to get one good shot, but one of the challenges that we have is when we have an infusion of money in on the starting side, you can raise them, but what that does is compress the middle. And that's what we've been working on for I come to you with a 12th budget cycle, and every year we sit down and look, how do we improve the career paths so that someone could reasonably come to work here and say, I'm going to start here. If I do my job, if I meet the things and I get to be Inspector 3 or I get to be a supervisor, then there is a growth pattern for me and for my family. And I believe that's what this government should do. That's what I've been doing. But we've just not been able to get all of that there. And see, in my world, we're not talking about a lot of money. I mean, I could have a couple of $5 million infusions just in our deal, and you could probably sail our ship for 5, 6, 7 years on a pretty good trajectory. And so I'm concerned about that. I have been since the day I got here, and I think it's going to be an ongoing challenge. To how do we want to attract the best, folks? You do. The consumers of this state expect, I've said it this way in a football terms, folks want me to win the Super Bowl every day. When it comes to food safety, you want me to win the Super Bowl every day. And the consumers are really not even tolerant of a fumble during the game. And so in order to do that, we have to put the best team on the field. And we have a great team, a wonderful team. But I get cherry-picked. We get a good young person, and the federal government hires them up, sometimes for twice what we pay. And so, Representative, I hope that helps on the answers. Thank you, sir.
Representative Hawkins.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, sir.
How are you? This is a policy question that could lead to a revenue question later. Will Schofield, he's been talking to you about the meat processing cutting plant in Hall County, which, I think it's a great idea. Only a few schools in the nation have been doing this, where the high school on the FFA property they have up there will actually start a program with instructors dealing with our local farmers that can sell on small volumes. How are you on that project? I know he's been talking to you about that.
I'm very well aware of it,
yeah.
And I'm hopeful. Matter of fact, I know our team, when he first started from our meat inspection animal division,
right.
We've offered. I haven't seen drawings, but we've offered suggestions, baseline suggestions. If you're going to do it, here's the way. Here's some things that you've got to consider, because what you don't want in that environment is somebody. It happens from time to time. Somebody goes off and builds something, and it would have been a whole lot better off if we can hold your hand while you're talking to your architect, because the drain's got to be here, and this has got to be here, and there's a flow that where our people can be very helpful as they're, and so I know we've been engaged at that level, but once again, if he opens, And if he intends to sell that product at retail, which I know he does he wants to have a retail facility.
And the school system, but right, some retail.
That's right.
Right.
It has to, well, there's two things if he's going to serve the school system. Well, let's come back to retail.
Right.
Y'all, anywhere, anybody tells you that something has to be stolen and sold in the state of Georgia has to be USDA inspected, that is not accurate. You can have a state inspection which is just the same. It is the same as, equal to. The principle is called equal to. So our meat inspectors have, and they can put a state of Georgia seal on it, and then it can be sold anywhere in Georgia, it just can't be sold in Alabama. Then there's a level where we have our inspectors working with the federal government under a program that's called the Talmud Jacobs Act. And the TA inspectors is when my inspector changes the color of his coat and the color of his hard hat, and then he has the federal stamp. And that's a bureaucratic thing that was set up back in the 60s, but it works because at least it's not a federal inspector, it's our state employee, and the federal government, say, pays for half of that program. And so to get in school lunch, I'm almost certain he's going to have to come through a TA situation.
Right, but you could help him with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So in your opinion, this is a plausible idea?
I think it's not only plausible, I think we need about 10 more in the state. And I think first of all, from a training of, there's an enormous deficit of people who can be butchers, can be anywhere in that technical field. And plus, we would love to be able to poach a few of those folks to actually come be inspectors too. So, and Will Schofield is, as the old saying goes, he may not be in a class of himself as school superintendent, but the class he's in, it doesn't take long to call roll. Yeah. He's a mighty good one.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
E. Anderson.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being here today with us.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I have two questions. One is the example you gave us about the gentleman that left for another opportunity to make more money. What would you think would be the percentage of your staff in your department that has left us for that one reason? And then also, my other question is, do you have any openings now in your department?
Chairman, it is I'll be happy to provide the members of the committee for every percentage of every one of our folks, every one of our divisions. But I can tell you with respect to food safety and meat inspection, two things that you want us to do really, really well. That turnover is north of 30% annually. Okay, here's the thing. Let's shoot over to the let's shoot over to this agronomist position. Y'all dealt with a couple of bills on soil amendments and good things. We've got a really good program put together on that. So we're gonna hire an agronomist to come to work for the Department of Agriculture. I advertised that, which we kind of thought we could get it there. We advertised that at $65,000. I didn't get an applicant. We never got an applicant for that position. So what did we do? We cannibalized inside because some of the folks that I have now in professional positions said $65,000 is a lot of money and I won't apply for that. So we pulled them up, which is great, and we've got good, mind you, the program's going to be run right. I've got two good people that have filled the things that y'all have, but now I have to go back into the marketplace and backfill from where those folks came from. Hemp, it took us it's taken me almost a year to fill that position for a HILP licensing coordinator that y'all funded. And I guess it's probably, that's not too uncommon with anybody else's business, but it's certainly a big challenge. And Chairman, what was your second question, or did I?
Do you have any openings in your department now?
Any openings?
I think he was
Yes,
asking for a
yes,
job.
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Openings. Yes, sir. We will routinely, we will hover any, I get HR reports every Monday. That's one of the first things we do. And we're hovering anywhere from 25 to 40 every week, which, you know, is running about, Jimmy, what, 7-8% of our workforce. But it's a revolving door. That's the, if we talked about the revolving door, we'd be up north of a third of our workforce. And it's just, that's a big challenge.
Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How you doing this morning, Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Listen, we certainly want to thank you for the job that you do as the commissioner of this state. I mean, I think you have really represented us well in that capacity. I am also gravely concerned about your strategic plan, and maybe we might have to do this at another date, for the recruitment and retention of employees in your department. Mm-hmm. There is no way that we will be able to continue at the pace that we're going at the salaries that we're paying. I think Walmart and Sam's pays their warehouse workers $35,000, $36,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And we're expecting people with technical expertise and degrees to begin at that capacity. So at some point, I don't know whether or not it will be at this meeting or at the other subcommittee meeting, I would like for you to see if you can specifically address your strategic plan for that. My other question is this, or observation. We are what we eat. And that has a grave impact on the health of Georgians. And I would like to know, over at the department, how do we address that specific concern?
Okay. Representative, how will we, what was the specific concern? We are what we...
We are what we eat.
Uh-huh.
And since the Department of Agriculture is so much involved in producing what we eat, mm-hmm. Is there anything that we do specifically to speak to Georgians on how we eat better from a nutritional standpoint?
Sure. I think on a broad scale, one of the things that one of the primary reasons of starting Georgia Grown was to have a consumer interface. So you build those relationships where the communication can go by so that people understand a little more about the food supply, where it comes from, where I can buy it, what kind of food it is. Is it organic? Is it not? Is it grass fed? Is it cage free? Or is it just regular? And I think that when you look at our web resources, our interaction with social media, when you look at how we're interfacing with consumers, it's a considerably different environment than it was 11 years ago, and that's one I'm very proud of that. From a standpoint, if I understand the question correctly, and I'm not being difficult, on the inspection side of food safety, I'm ensuring the integrity of that. That's divided in two different areas. One is in retail, and the other is food manufacturing. Our folks are thoroughly trained in everything we have to do to comply with respect to making sure sanitation is what it is, the product is what it is. On beef and meat, those kind of things, we actually have a couple of investigators that make sure everything's labeled correctly. Make sure that that temperatures are where they're supposed to be. That's what those folks do. But when we talk about knowing what we eat and where it comes from, and we look at if this was a part of the question, and I think it may be. The whole country of origin labeling issue at the federal level has been a huge debate for 20 years. You'll have beef producers that I don't think support that, and the reason is there's so many cattle that cross the border from Canada to Mexico and America that there's just no way to accurately track that. But this is what I've always said. It gets back to the free choice of all of us. I told a group Wednesday morning, they were questioning me about the Chinese ownership of Smithfield. I don't like it that they own it, Smithfield. But they asked me what I'm going to do about it. I said, well, here's what I'd do about it if I were you. If you don't like that, don't buy their bacon. We have fueled this as a nation by thinking everything we want at the tip of our finger should be available 24/7, 365. And we've fueled this. And so if we want to walk our walk and buy Georgia grown and support our local farmers at small, medium, large, wherever they come from, that's how we need to respond in the marketplace. And I think the market's still very powerful, and it's a way to answer some of the other things that sometimes we may want to do through regulations. Representative, my friend, I hope I hope I hit most of your question.
Hello, you did. I guess where I was really trying to go to was this, is that our children will live shorter lifespans than we will. And a lot of that has to do with what it is that they're eating. It also addresses the health of Georgians because of what it is that they eat. I don't know, since I've been around state government, is there anybody who speaks to that, to educate Georgians and to make sure that we are healthy based on the choices that we're making when we eat?
That's a good point. I'll be happy to. I'll dive deeper into it with you personally if that's what you'd like for me to do.
Senator C.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you recall several years ago when I met you at the farmers market in Clayton County with kids where we did the pizza farm? On the same track that Representative Dukes, we have to train up children to know what's going in their bodies and what's going to help them grow up to be strong individuals. Would you agree?
Yes, ma'am. I think, ma'am, yes. And, y'all, I apologize for being hard-headed today, but y'all, it is extremely hard for me. Would you mind asking that again, ma'am?
I was just
Before I
asking,
agree, I want to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah, I was basically asking about raising kids to understand better
yes,
what
ma'am.
goes into their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. And that's why I will appeal, even though it is not under my roof, it is under my general interest from agriculture, is that I will always appeal to you to doing the proper things before H and FFA. of having that's how we address kids. But then there are other student organizations. What we should be reaching out to young people and making those. We make lots of investments in their education. I will always say that where their food comes from, how it's produced, and what your nutrition should be ought to be a part of that well-rounded education.
One last question, and it is a personal question, and it is from me to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen the agriculture display I have put in this Capitol?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. We need to keep people learning and understanding more about food and how it's grown and how we get it, protect our bodies. Thank you.
Can I have one more, Mr. Chairman, from a standpoint of her to me? You remember who asked the Rules Committee Chairman to put that on the calendar for you?
Me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Where are we at? Chairman Knight. Representative Knight. Representative Al Williams.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I've been amazed, sir, since you miraculously turned a meat cutter into an agronomist. I know, and where do you advertise for jobs? And in the legislature, there are a lot of people here used to working for nothing and never getting a pay raise, so you might need to tell us about how a legislator can become an agronomist and have time off for at least 3 months, and where you advertising jobs.
But we'll spare you that one, Commissioner, and move to Representative Hewley.
Isn't that where you say the representative knows of what he speaks, or something like that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for doing all those questions and your presentation. Is there a way for us to get a synopsis or report regarding the loan program that you talked about and where those loans went?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, would you provide that?
Yes, ma'am.
The second thing, it's probably more of a comment than a question. It appears that the state of Georgia needs to do a salary study and fund it and pay our people in order for us to address the turnover and all the things that you've been talking about.
Thank you.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner, this is really just a comment. I've had the opportunity to work with Amy Carter, the editor of the Market Bulletin, and I think she does an absolutely amazing job. And living real close to the border, I have people that are friends in Alabama that come and want to get my copy of the Market Bulletin. So she's doing a great job, and I just wanted to commend you and her and hope you can pay her well and keep her.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, she's a treasure, and if anybody, lest anybody thinks the Market Bulletin is not still popular, there's somewhere around 40,000 people still subscribe. One of my first deals 11 years ago, I went to a Rotary Club in Vinings. I made a presentation that I thought was wonderful. I was expecting some technical questions in Vinings. I was the first Commissioner of Agriculture to ever speak to the Rotary Club in Vinings. And when I finished, I said, "Are there any questions today?" And it waited, and it waited, and the guy sitting about where Representative Mathis is raised his hand. He said, "Son, I don't care what you do, but I'm telling you what, don't you ever touch that Market Bulletin, I'll never vote for you again." So it's popular even in Vinings. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Are there any?
I think you've exhausted the questions. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Appreciate you being here today.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
We now have a break in the schedule for lunch. Remember, we will start back at 1:30. Chairman England, anything you want to say before then?
No, sir, other than just be sure to be back here and in your seats at 1:30, and we'll try to keep us on time and on track this afternoon. Thank you.